All right. We're going to go straight into the discussion so we can get started. So the first question for each one of you in the panel is, how has the last 2 months shifted your political outlook? Last 3 months, 90 days. How has it shifted the way you think about politics?
Ladies first. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. First, I just want to thank Dr. Baz, Muslim Visionaries, for having me, for creating this event. It's a pleasure to share the stage with Dr. West, Dr. Soboh, and my personal favorite, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, to my left right here, also known as Malcolm X, also known as my birthday twin, no offense to, May 19, look it up. So I'm very happy to be here today. The past 3 months, how has it changed my outlook? I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent. I'm gonna be real quick, but it'll make sense in my response. I just graduated with my PhD in religious studies in June. Okay, an 8-year arduous process. God was with me every single step of the way. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And the title of my dissertation was From Marginal to Mainstream, an ethnographic exploration of faith, fashion, and female Muslim entrepreneurship in the United States. And what I did was examine how modest fashion has served as a medium to change Islam's cultural footprint in the United States in tandem with the rise of Muslim entrepreneurship. And I was able to prove that it has really contributed to the project of mainstreaming Muslims in the United States. And this was in June. Not just 5 months later, the events of October 7th happened, and all of a sudden I feel that the work that we've been doing as Muslims, the project of mainstreaming Islam in the United States, since 2011, we are back at square one. The work that we've been doing since 9/11, that's almost a quarter of a century ago, we now are going back to very dark times. And so what it made me realize is that we have to get moving. What it made me realize is that we have to, especially since we are living in a country where the president is complicit in what many reputable human rights organizations have called a genocidal campaign against Palestinians, against our own people, which is by extension a euphemism for Muslims, right? We do not feel comfortable anymore with the level of atrocities that we are witnessing in Palestine. And what it made me realize is that we have to use Palestine as the metric by which we measure the extent in which Muslims are liberated. We have to use the Palestinian project for liberation as the metric by which Muslims are liberated here in the United States. And so we are not comfortable. We are absolutely not comfortable, and that means that we have to wake up. And so I feel that those before who said, I'm not really politically active, or it's just not my thing, have to take a different stance. And post 9/11, the Muslim community was divided. You had those who were like, it's time now to be more politically active, and they did, and they kind of integrated more. And then you had those who believed that integrating into the United States meant being dominated by the United States, and so they did not want to be politically active for religious conviction, or perhaps that it's just not their forte. And now everybody has realized that we have to do something. We cannot sit back and allow the persecution of our people.
When Dr. West was going around giving hugs to everyone, and everyone giving their talk or speech, I wanted to share this before I answer the question. I just want to let you know that Dr. West could change his stance and collect $1 million in one day. He can simply sell his soul to the devil and be a different gathering and collect all this money in less than a moment and multiple folds, right? So the fact that he's here with us today and each one of you is given, we need to give more. Make sure you do not leave before putting your name on the list and give something tonight. The other thing that we need to understand that for the past 25 years, I've been attending demonstrations and rallies for the sake of Gaza. Facebook just reminded me that back in 2015, I put a post praying for Gaza. It did not start on October 7th, right? What saddened me is that for the past 25 years, we've been sending so much money in relief money and support to the people of Palestine. If we just invested 20% of that in our political engagement in this country, I don't think we have seen this in Gaza. For the past 3 months, 4 things been happening in conjunction: a massacre, a genocide, and a Holocaust against the people of Gaza. But at the same time, they've been depicted as the devils, as the evil people, as they are the perpetrators. At the same time, here in America, a vicious attack on our community, a vicious Islamophobic attack on our community to make us look bad. At the same time, our voices are being suppressed. How many of you had their social media accounts suspended? How many of you have been silenced? I've been interviewed by so many news outlets. None of them published an article until lately. The first 2 months were frustrating because our voices were suppressed. We signed contracts with billboard companies and we paid. And when we sent them the artwork that says "Pray for Gaza," they rejected it. They said, "We cannot do that." One of the executives said it clearly, "I cannot do this. This is too personal for me." So the frustration that we've been going through is now being converted into activism. For me personally, I met with so many congressmen and congresswomen in the past 3 months. I met with the governor of California in the past 3 months. And we've seen the shift. At the beginning, they were so negative, so dismissive. Every time we say something, they say, "But the Gazan people started it." They pushed on every single button in our emotions to make us get angry. In the last few weeks, there's a change. These politicians, they're not your kindergarten teachers. If you are meeting with politicians, you're not going for a counseling session. Don't open your hearts and mind to them. You have to know how to play the game with them. And that's what shifted, and that's what we need to start doing from now on. So our community, the fact that our boss has not a single Palestinian gene in his body, but it's all in his mind and his heart. The fact that our boss and Malik and everyone at Muslim Vision is organizing this event, that's a good sign that we're going in the right direction. So may Allah bless you. I think the change is beautiful, and what we heard today is great, and the attendees today are great, so we'll see great results in the coming future, inshallah.
I have come to learn and listen, be instructed and inspired, and I am by your words. First, congratulations to our dear sister Yacoubi. Give it up again. She's doctor now. She's PhD now. Oh, yes, love warrior, freedom fighter, well-equipped, spirit, heart, mind, body, and community. And then this brother here, his reputation precedes him. He's been at it a long time. High level of longevity, of integrity, my dear brother, Dr. Soboh. Give it up again. Give it up for this brother. He's been consistent. But I'm here to learn and listen. And for the last 3 months, I just think, even given the indescribable evil and misery, it's a new day when it comes to the Palestinian struggle for freedom. Every corner of the globe understands now just how central it is, not just for the Middle East, not just for the USA, not just for Europe, not just for Africa, not just for the Caribbean, for the world. A spotlight has now been cast, and the question becomes, how do we respond? What do we do?
One thing that I cannot forget is an interview with Tamara Tamimi. She's the mother of Abdulhamid Tamimi, one of the 3 men who was shot in Burlington, Vermont over Thanksgiving. When she was interviewed in an interview with ABC, they asked her, "What do you want the world to know about what happened to your son?" She said, "I want the world to know that my son is a human being." She's pleading for the humanity of her son. She wants the world to recognize her son as a human being. Is that really where we are at? It is. And we see the barbarism, the animalistic treatment of our own people is case in point that this is how Palestinians and by extension Muslims are being viewed. So how uncomfortable does that make you feel? And recognize that anger is a form of resistance. Memory is a form of resistance. To be active doesn't mean that you only have to be politically active and hold a position in office at the federal or state level. There's other ways to be active. There's other ways to contribute to the project of liberating Palestine. And so I want you all to deeply think, in what ways can you help? Because we can't sit by anymore.
One of the most common questions is, how realistic is this project? We have the Democrats, we have the Republicans, and we have the establishment that controls things. And Malcolm X famously said, we're like a football in between, getting kicked around from side to side. So my next question is, how realistic is it to move away from these established systems and really start building power?
You like to start? Well, everything is possible. If Mr. Orangehead made it to the White House, I think everything is possible. What I think that we should do as a community is we need to work in tandem. We can work on building strategic relationship with all the parties. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But at the same time, work on an alternative system or an alternative way to get out of this. We need to learn from other communities how they work on all sides. So is it realistic? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. So let us work on it. But at the same time, let's not put all our eggs in one basket. Let's work on all fronts. And we have plenty of community members. We have plenty of resources. We have plenty of activists. We have a lot of money. And we are not that small community anymore. One thing that I've been saying for the 8 years ago or 7 years ago, I made a talk and I said at the Shura Council banquet that stop being so harsh on our community, comparing us to other communities, because we are still the new kid on the block. Our organizations are newer compared to other communities' organizations. This year, the past 3 months showed that our community had grown and matured and evolved to become ready for the next stage in our growth. I am tired of us looking for others' sympathy. We need others' respect. We need people to respect us. We need people to understand that we have voting powers. We need people to understand that we have financial power. So I think with those components and tools, we can work on all the fronts, working on a new, whatever you called it, out of the two-party system. Every single civilized country have more than two parties. I don't know why we're always limited to that, but at the same time, we can work on all fronts.
I think that it's very realistic to move away from a two-party system. Because when we look at the rest of the world comparatively, the majority of democracies around the world are a multi-party democracies. The United States is actually a rarity in its two-party system. But the issue is that the electoral institutions make it extremely difficult for a third party to actually run and to get on the ballot. And that's why events like today are extremely important. And all the people who donated money today, because like they said, campaigns take money. You are the people who are putting your money where your mouth is. So I want to thank you for that. And we have to continue to contribute in those ways because it is an extremely difficult process. And that's why Muslim Visionaries is really spearheading a beautiful moment in our Muslim community. Think about it. I don't think that many of us would have been here today had we not believed in a viable third option for our party. So thank you, Muslim Visionaries, and thank you, Dr. West.
Yeah, I just love this word visionaries. What does that mean? That means already you recognize that the status quo is something that must be radically scrutinized and rejected owing to the thick corruption and cowardliness shot through both parties. Both parties tied to big money, big militarism, and unable to speak to the plight of Palestinians in Gaza, unable to speak to poor and working people in the United States. And anytime I hear the word realism, I say to myself, I come from a people who were enslaved for 244 years. It was never realistic to think you could overthrow slavery, but it went down. Then here comes neo-slavery, Jim Crow, terrorism, lynching, another 100 years. Can you overthrow Jim Crow, Doesn't seem to be, at the moment, realistic. Watch these people fight. Watch these people organize. Watch these people have personal and institutional capacity with alliances with others. Then we overthrow Jim Crow and Jane Crow, what happens? Jim Crow and Jane Crow Jr. mass incarceration, decrepit schools, segregated spaces. Is it realistic? We fight because it's right. We fight because it's moral. We fight because it's just, and we're in solidarity with others. So that what happens is, Mandela used to say, what people said was impossible ends up being inevitable if enough people are willing to fight. That's Mandela, 27 and a half years in the jail of South Africa apartheid. Oh, those are wise words, wise words.
Powerful. So we've been talking a lot about boycotting. Earlier you said we're boycotting Starbucks, we're boycotting this. We know we have a lot of companies we're taking money away from, but where are we putting that money? So how as a community can we start investing in ourselves, our own people, and our own causes?
I think that boycotting is one of the most effective ways to resist. And we're witnessing the effects of the boycott. It's one of the best ways also to do something with the helplessness that we've been feeling as we experience the secondary trauma, the vicarious trauma as we watch the atrocities on our screens. But I think one of the most important things is as we hold other companies accountable, we have to hold ourselves accountable, and that's harder. We have to be doing our due diligence, our research, looking into these brands that we are buying from on a daily basis, and really investigating to what extent are their practices ethical, to what extent are they funding unjust wars, and being confident in being able to walk away when we see that they are engaging in shenanigans. But more importantly, the Western market, the Western capitalist market, has finally awoken to the capacity of Muslim spending power. And so now they want their piece of the pie. They're catering to different aspects of Muslim lifestyle, right? We want to make sure as a Muslim community that major corporate companies are not eclipsing the Muslim entrepreneurial efforts, the grassroots Muslim entrepreneurial efforts. So I say, if you want something, believe me, a Muslim has made it. You got to do your due diligence. And if you don't ask someone who knows, I'm positive that they will tell you. And also, do not hesitate to make connections, collaborations with big department stores, big brands, because believe you me, that they would much rather hire someone who already knows what they're doing instead of hiring someone in-house to cater to a community that they know nothing about. So you can be the cultural consultant. You go and make the brand that you're looking for and try to make those deals.
A few years ago, I was going through an executive MBA program at Pepperdine University, and one of the modules was marketing. And I learned a lot in the marketing module. But one thing amazing that the professor told me on the side, he said, by the way, just want to let you know, it is known within the marketing field that the next big target of marketing is the Muslim American community. We need to understand that. What Sister Hassanah, what Dr. Hassanah just said is so powerful and so true about that. But ask yourself the question, how much, I don't want to say names, but this famous coffee place with ugly green logo. Let's say, how much does that company spend on each one of us so we can walk into that place and buy a cup of coffee? If you just realize how much is spent on each one of us just to bring us in, you'll realize how valuable you are to that company. It's not just $5 or $4 for a cup of coffee. It does make a difference. But even if it doesn't, let's say you're not buying a certain product, is not going to make any difference on them. At least deep in your conscience, you can sleep comfortable at night knowing that your dollar is not supporting the genocide of the people of Gaza. If that's all what you're getting from not paying money to a company that supports the genocide, then that's worth it. So think about it that way. We need to be smart, though, about this process. How many of you received a message with trillion brand that you need to boycott? That doesn't work. Let us be a little bit more organized and focused. Let us make sure that we're doing the right thing so it can make a difference when we want to make a difference with those companies. Thank you.
Well, I have been very, very blessed to be a part of the BDS movement. When I heard the Palestinian Voices call for boycott and divestment and sanctions, I was blessed to become a part of it immediately with Brother Omar and the others. I was blessed to be a part of a similar kind of movement against South Africa. I was blessed to be a part of a similar movement against El Salvador. Anytime people suffering and struggling put out a call for solidarity in the form of any weapon, that's a non-violent weapon in that case. That's what PDS is. And we know the first Intifada, non-violent. Second, non-violent with rocks against one of the most powerful militaries in the world. And JFK used to say what? Those who make non-violent revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. You got to deal with that tension. We want to keep track of the humanity of everybody, but we also want to understand boycotts are one of the weapons of those who are oppressed. And we use all forms of weaponry, always mediated with our quest for justice and love. And so for me, the PDS movement, I want to see it stronger than ever here and around the world.
And if I can just add very quickly that for those of you who are thinking, does the boycott really make an impact? To what extent are my actions truly affecting, the economic outcomes of these companies? I want to remind you what Dr. Omar Suleiman said. It was a really poignant point, which is boycotting is not just monitoring the economic hits that these companies are going to take. It's also hugely in part of the process of character building. When you are standing for something, you fall for nothing. It's a very true thing. My 3- and 4-year-old, almost 4 and 5, when they see me even turning into somewhere near a Starbucks, they tell me, Mama, انت ما عم تروحي على Starbucks, ما عم يساعدوا الناس في فلسطين. You better not go to Starbucks. They're not helping the people in Palestine. And I love it. I love it. They're holding me accountable. My little angels are holding me accountable. And the last thing I'll say about this too is, Dr. Omar Suleiman said this as well, is would you ever do business with someone who hurt the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Undoubtedly no. Undoubtedly no. So remember that. The second you go back to Zara, even though they apologize, thank you so much for that apology. You go back to Starbucks, even though God knows what they're going to do next to get us back. Remember that. Would you ever do business with someone who hurt the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
So the next question is about ethics. One of the biggest challenges we have as a community is when you engage in political parties or you start getting involved in the political process, the tension arises. You start feeling the pressure. You join the Democratic Party, they put you on a committee, you start moving up, you start feeling guilty to start letting your friends down. So one of the biggest challenges of power is staying committed to ethics. So how as a community can we stay committed to ethics while navigating and dealing with power, because power corrupts?
I'd like to hear from Dr. West. How did you do it for the past 40 years, 50 years?
Well, I'll never ever claim purity at all. I'm a jazz man. And when you're a jazz man, you keep track of catastrophe. You have a different conception of time called swing. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. So you're off the beat. You're in the minor key. You're defiant. You're dissonant. And you have to have others to keep you accountable as you are improvisational. And improvisation is not opportunism. It is being able to be flexible and shifting in light of your vision and in light of your commitment to empowering poor and working people. And so when you think of how do you sustain your way in the midst of so much corruption and cowardliness, you think of, I want to keep track of the catastrophe, not the petty activities going on in the party or within the mainstream. What is a catastrophe? Too much suffering of human beings and oppressed people. What is the conception of time? to make sure that my eye is always on the possibilities of oppressed people coming together to make the world a better place. And then improvisation, which means you always got to be flexible enough so you don't get locked into any narrow dogma or orthodoxy that blinds you to new possibilities. And that's where accountability, that's where community, that's where answerability plays a fundamental role. So I have to continually make sure I'm accountable to somebody else in a movement of solidarity. People see me moving in a certain way, Brother West, watch yourself, pray for me. I'm coming back. I want to stay right on there, straight and narrow. And then there's so much joy in the struggle. If you don't find joy in the struggle, there'll be enough carrots and enough benefits that the status quo will convince you to sell your soul for a mess of pottage. But if you find joy in the struggle based on your love of the people, you'll be able to run on to the end with a smile.
Love you. For the past couple of decades, we saw some of the young Muslims running for offices or getting engaged in politics. And when we asked them, why are you doing things that are against our morals and our ethics? And their answer was like, that's the only way you can win. That's the only way you can get there. And I'm just letting you know, for all these amazing young people who I've been seeing for the past couple of months being really active and organizing efforts to create these new organizations and new movements, you can do it. You don't have to choose between your ethical commitment and political gain or power. If you do it right, you have to be smart, by the way. You cannot be, sorry for the analogies, a rabbit or a lamb going to the political field. They'll eat you, they'll chew you up, right? But at the same time, don't be a fox. Don't be deceptive. Be a lion. Be a lion, like this guy right here. The lion will not allow itself to eat from a dead animal that someone else caught it. They have moral standards, right? Be a lion, be strong, be powerful, be smart, be strategic. Don't let them manipulate you. Don't let them play you. But at the same time, you have a higher authority that you report to. That's your God. Do not sell your ethics for anything.
A non-Muslim American author who authored the book 100 Most Influential People in the World ranked the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the #1 most influential person in the entire world. He said the reason was because he's the only person in human history that was able to be successful on both the religious and secular front. What does that tell us? That if anybody can hold a position of power and do it with dignity, it's a Muslim. Now, we know that we definitely have examples of that not being the case, but we can live up to that by taking a page from the Prophet's playbook. Studying his processes, understanding how he went about a life committed to ethics, a life committed to God consciousness. And I think so beautifully what both Dr. West and Dr. Soboh said about the idea of accountability. I love, Dr. West, when you said earlier, when people are accusing you of certain things, the first thing you do is self-reflect. And in my dissertation, I interviewed many Muslim influencers to understand multiple things, but one of the things I wanted to understand was the power of the platform, because we're talking about power. When you get power in any realm, whether it's politics, social media, you start making, doing collaborations, having the likes, the comments, etc., positions of power, naturally the platform changes you. So one of the main things that I found throughout my research is that many of the women who so badly didn't want the platform to change their moralities, to alter their ethics, is that they had processes in place to keep them accountable. And one of them was assigning certain friends to always hold them accountable whenever they saw suspicious actions from them. So choosing who are those people in your life. Like Dr. Umar Suleiman said, if you have a group of good friends, that's good. but you need to have friends who are great so you can look up to them. You need to surround yourself with those people because they will hold you accountable. So a constant process of self-reflection and self-criticism, as you've alluded to, is very important in holding these positions of power.
My final question to each one of the panelists is, we're talking today about visionaries, having a vision. What is your vision? If you had to dream and to think about what the future could look like for the political landscape and the Muslim community is involved in engaging it, what does that vision look like? What do you see a year from now? We have an entire year where we're fighting a massive system that's against us. What's your vision when it comes to the outcome of all this?
You want to envision, inspire us? That's a tough one. I'm going to leave it for Linda Salsour to talk about it later on. Honestly, I don't see it as a dream, rather a reality that's about to happen. I am very optimistic about our community. I'm very optimistic about the skills and the talents and the newer generations that is really proud of their identity, proud of their faith, proud of their Americanism, and they want to see difference in the future. So the way I see it, or the way I look at it, that we as a community will be respected, will be treated fairly, like everybody, or like everybody's treated fairly, and then in return, we are being citizens of positive change for everybody. We want to see America a good place for every single person who lives here. And because we are supposedly the superpower of the world, and by the way, I always said that the American election should be taking place all around the world. Everybody around the world should be voting in our US elections, not just Iowa. So what I envision that each one of us working so hard to reach high levels of success, but be a positive contributor or for a good change that's taking place in America. This is how I see it, and I think it will take place, and I think it will happen, and I think we will see it in our lifetimes. We have giants, as Malik mentioned earlier, who built the infrastructure of our community, and we are going and climbing on top of their shoulders to reach the next high, and we will see, inshallah, a great result in the coming decade or so.
Anyone know who the scholar of religion Riza Aslan is? He used to be the #1 most brought on interviewee, on cable news networks anytime world catastrophes would happen regarding Islam. And for 10 years, he would go on every single news channel and give them the knowledge about how Islam is not this and it doesn't support terrorism and that Muslims actually contribute to the greater society of the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And what he realized was that he wasn't pushing the needle. And so he said, I'm no longer accepting any more cable news interviews, because no matter what he said, no matter what type of data he threw at them, the same subtitle: does Islam support terrorism? Does Islam oppress its women? And he realized the reason why he wasn't moving the needle is because, to quote him, Islamophobia is rooted in fear, and fear is impervious to data. You can throw as much data out, it's not going to change the opinions of people. And Pew Research did a study a couple of years ago that said, when they surveyed the general non-Muslim public on a feeling thermometer about how they feel toward other people of religious faiths, Muslims, the general public felt the coldest toward Muslims. The same study found also that Americans don't know Muslims, so they don't feel the best toward the people that they don't know. And so Dr. Riza Aslan said, what Muslims need is a humanizing movement. And I believe that the Project of Palestine is the greatest humanizing movement. And that the people were once sleeping and now we are awake. And I will say, in the lines of my great-grandfather, who was Abu al-Iqbal al-Sheikh Salim Al-Yacoubi, the jurisprudent, the first Azhari scholar of the city of Jaffa, who was the jurisprudent of Jaffa, who oversaw all the legal affairs of that city. In his books of poetry, he said, "Li Filistin wama mithluha mundu al-qidam." Palestine is mine, and there has never been a place like it besides ancient times, since ancient times. Inna fiha haraman ana anhu lam anam. It has a sacred sanctuary that I will never sleep until it is liberated. And I believe that this humanizing moment has created Muslims to wake up. Our community is finally awake. So I envision a future of awoken Muslim community.
You know, my brother, I would love to hear your answer as the visionary leader that you are. Let's give it up for this dear Dr. Boz. He and the co-founders have a grand vision, because we know the future, unpredictable, incomplete, unfinished. It depends on what we do in the present. Never get discouraged, never be surprised, never be paralyzed, always be willing to fight, which is love, laugh, swing, organize, and find some joy in struggle. But is it out of order to ask you to answer that
I'll
question?
answer at the end of the night.
Oh, at the end of the night?
At the end of the night, I'm going to tell everyone our vision before we leave.
All right,
Yeah.
no, because your voice is very important. Because the younger generation, let us be very honest, that's so much of where the future lies. Our examples have to, in some way, maybe inspire the younger generation. And then one find one's own voice based on the voices of persons like myself, and then even the voices of the dead, like our dear brother Malcolm, alive in terms of his spirit here in this room and here in rooms all around the world.
Absolutely. May I, just last word. Dr. West, I'd like to invite you to my hometown. It's a small town. I don't know if you heard about it. It's called Bethlehem. You've heard about that?
Oh, yes, indeed, indeed, indeed.
So Bethlehem is very close to the river, the Jordan River, maybe an hour drive. And then Dr. Yacoubi is from Jaffa, and Jaffa is very close to the sea. So just for political correctness, from Bethlehem to Jaffa, Palestine will be free.
Oh, it's good to remember Jesus in the place, though, isn't it? Oh, I deeply appreciate that, indeed. I got a love for Muhammad, too.
I want to thank our amazing panelists, Dr. Yacoubi and Dr. Soboh, for laying it down. Amazing people with an immense amount of influence. We're getting organized on all fronts. Dr. Soboh has the ability to organize everyone through our masajid, keeping our community engaged. And Dr. Yacoubi has the power of the internet, social media, and is connecting with influencers all over the world to continuously build power for our community. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today.